We are live with another episode of Cafe Crash. I'm your host, Daniel Crosier, and we are joined by the marvelous Jason Larkin. How are you, sir?
Woo! I'm doing better and better. How about yourself, man?
I'm doing well. A lot of shoveling out today. We had a wonderful blizzard. Everybody loves those. How about you? I know you had to get out and shovel as well.
Yeah, I luckily I thought I was going to lose some branches, but I've got some really good neighbors though too. Because when I went out there to do stuff, they all pitched in and started helping me out. Some guy came in with a snowblower, and then some beer and whiskey was traded back and forth, and it was a good time. So
Good. I'm glad. Where are you living these days?
I'm living. It's technically Westminster. Sometimes it shows up as Broomfield. It's one of those things where it is literally across the street is Broomfield, and then I'm on the Westminster side. So
nice.
There's actually a street name too, right on my front yard. That street name is different that way than that way. So, but just the north side of town, about 112th and Sheridan.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, Jason, I know you from. You've volunteered in so many, pop culture events and stuff. You and Charlie LaGreca and Frank Romero go back a long ways, and I think I met you through them. I want to say Dink, but I think it might have been before then. Probably ran into you at Denver Comic Con or something, and all that, and you've always been, such a supportive, force for all your friends, doing those events, and even for us, us weirdo, fun-loving artists. He even showed up in one of my short films with Camp Crash as an extra. So, but
I love your show, by the way.
Yeah, and I love your catchphrase. A T-shirt someday.
Right on.
That's definitely a good icebreaker for anything. It's I love your show. What fucking show?
Well, it gives you that opening where you can talk about why I say that and stuff like that. All the world is a stage kind of thing. But for the most part, it's just guiding. I dig the path that you're on, the kind of person that you are. So that's what it basically means.
Yeah.
It's a good way to say it. So
you're sweet. I'm really just a smurf.
Right on.
You didn't catch that? Did you get that? Okay. All right. But so my first question. Right. Oh, sorry. Are we good now?
I think so.
We making the connections?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
I'm feeling you, buddy.
So my first question. What? Oh, still losing me? Oh, no.
No, I said I'm feeling you.
Okay. Oh, you're feeling me. Oh, my God. Okay. First question out of the gate. Who are you? Where do you come from? And how did you become, an awesome person, helping and supporting, so many people and trying to save the world, I would say. That's a big loaded question. I know.
Yeah. I blame my mom. How does that sound?
Okay.
As far as where I came from, my mom and my dad. Yeah, because my dad was one of those guys too that went after a lot of counseling and stuff like that. As far as with the AA programs, he was sober for like 20 some odd years, and he'd always go out there and do stuff. But I didn't really know my dad too well. As far as who I am, I was born here in Denver over at St. Joseph's Hospital, but I grew up in San Diego. And I came back out here in, I think it was like 85. And that's when I ran into the LaGrecas and with Frank Romero too. We went to high school together for like one semester. And we just kept hanging out because I was like the new guy. And that's pretty much about it. I did lose him for a long time though. So I kind of want to throw that out there. I had, someone told me a very powerful story and convinced me to go seek out some of my older friends. And when I did that, it just started falling into place. I mean, like with Chuck and Frank, I didn't really know how to get a hold of them, but a friend of mine said that they were running the Denver Comic Con. So I went out, I got a ticket, took my sister down, and went up to everybody that looked like they had any kind of authority and said, "Hey, man, I'm looking for these guys because I know them, and people are just chasing me away or what have you." So I was about ready to jump into some and doing whatever, but I ran into a friend of yours, the Enigma. He had a booth out there with a woman, another performer. I can't remember her name anymore, but she was in the comic book.
Yeah.
And we were just sitting there talking, and I brought up Frank, and he's, "Oh yeah, well, we know Frank Romero too." So we're just talking about it back and forth, and I look up, and there's Frank in that upper floor over there by the convention center. Those big windows, looking like the Kingpin, except for the fact that he was
this.
Yeah, but he's wearing that yellow staff shirt, and I want to say I cosplayed Frank that day, but I'm not sure. I think I did the next day, but there was like a brief, like I was about a 6 month, maybe a year long, where Frank was sporting like a great big mohawk, and he's a great big kid, and so I dressed up like him, and I had a great big blue mohawk, and I had Romero pointed on the back of my shirt and everything because I figured, what the hey, he did a lot for me as far as growing up and changing my perspective with stuff with comics, and I thought it'd be cool just to really stick out and just cosplay the dude that I'm looking for, But luckily he saw me. Yeah, and he's like going, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey," and we met by the Superman statue, So it was good times, man.
That's awesome. He remembered you from all those years back.
Yeah, I was surprised he even saw me because I was yelling, but you can't hear up there. For some reason, I got his attention, and it's almost the same thing with the La Grecas too, because he told me that they were doing a Rock Comic Con thing, and they were all out of tickets though, so they were trying to give a free one out, and so I go rushing over there, and didn't know anything about nothing. Finally found the right booth, and while I'm sitting there, I hear Jeff La Greca say, "Hey, Jason Larkin," and I'm like going, looking down, "Hey, Jeff."
That sounds like Jeff too.
Yeah, and then we finally ran into Chuck. Actually, Chuck recognized my sister before he recognized me. I was standing right next to her, but so like Tara, Bear, hugging and stuff like that. And I'm standing there on the side going, "Hey, man, what's up?" But the story behind why I started looking for my old friends, it was kind of a rough story, but it's pretty powerful. I don't know if you want to hear it or not. It involves like a carpet cleaner, like a chance encounter.
Okay.
I don't want to get too descriptive into it, but basically, I was only home about maybe a couple of months out of the year when I was working as an apprentice lineman, and I was home for one reason or another. And my wife at the time, she wanted to have the carpets cleaned. I'm thinking like, "Hey, great! I bought a carpet cleaner last year. I'll just go clean the carpets while I'm off of work," But she wanted to have someone do the carpets, so of course I was like, "Well, why?" Blah blah blah. So we got the carpets being done, and so the guy came in, and he was trying to sell a service, and I didn't really want the service, but we were the only ones in the house, and for some reason we hit it off really really well, and so we're talking and hanging out, and I'm moving furniture around, and wow, it's kind of a dark story, man. Well, I already started, so we're getting along great.
You got to deliver, buddy.
I know, and we started for some reason the situation came up with like substance abuse and long-term like painkillers, things like that. And the guy stops in his tracks and says, "Well, whatever you do whatever it takes to make your wife happy. I mean, if she tells you to go to a different state to pick up a cheesecake or something like that, you go do that." And you find out, and it was like such a change with the temper of the conversation. So I finally had to ask him, what was that about? And some of these are his words, and I didn't really pry too much, but I get the gist that he said he was in finance, like stocks and bonds and stuff, and he thought he was very successful. He had a trophy wife and 2.3 kids, the way he explained it, And every time his wife came up to him with something, he would just say, "Oh, I'll go to the doctor, get a pill, everything's fine," And I guess one day he walked in, and his wife was standing there, and she said, "You don't know me at all." And took her own life right in front of him, and it just devastated this guy for like 2
Yeah.
years. He was just jacked up, and so we're, next thing you know, we're like, hugging each other and crying and going through all that stuff, and he turns around and he says, "Yeah, you're gonna have to reach out because it takes so long for you to recover. Find some old friends because the friends that you think you have aren't going to be your friends anymore. They're going to be tired of hearing your problems and everything, and it's just going to be awful." So he says, "Well, do you have any outlets?" Right. I'm like, because we've been cleaning carpets. So I'm like, "Well, yeah, I think there's an outlet on every wall in this room, And he says, "No, your friends, So
there's an outlet there. There's an outlet there. I advise you not to stick your fingers in there.
Yeah.
I hear flesh and electricity don't combine well, unless you're Electro, the Spider-Man villain.
Or you got that Faraday cage thing going on, Yeah, but so I started reaching out, and that's how I got a hold of people. And I kind of feel bad because I haven't been as creative as I wanted to be, but I kind of threw down some of things just keep happening. I didn't expect to have a dog, and now I have a dog, and that was just like an hour ago. You know what I mean? So those kind of things happen,
Because you and I were doing a test run, like 2 hours ago. A lot happens in your life in such a short amount of time. Suddenly you're a changed person from the that time before.
Dude, all I know is I'm holding on with both hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because things just happen so fast. It reminds me of that Ferris Bueller, end of the monologue.
Right. Andy just chimed in. He says, "The man, the legend, Jason Larkin."
I knew that guy from high school too, man.
Oh, cool. Is he somebody that you reconnected with then?
No, actually, I never stopped hanging out with him. I had this because I grew up in California. Mm-hmm. I had this core group of friends that I knew from like high school. Or for him, I knew when I was in 7th grade. But we had this ongoing party. I'd come out about every 2 years, and it would just be like a nonstop 10-day process of just booze, alcohol, jumping in the pools, running all over California, and it was always the same people, and it stretched out over, I don't know, like a decade and a half. I have pictures and film, and you can't tell which year it is because it's all the same people, all doing the same thing, and but he's part of that group, and I knew him from French class.
Oh, cool! Wow, cool. Heather says, "Woohoo!"
She is my sister's college roommate. I slept in her bed when I was homeless, and I needed to have a place to stay over the summer. I was working backstage for their college production of Fiddler on the Roof, and she was gone, so I hung out with all of her roommates. And like I said, I got to hang out in a room. So we've been joking for decades now until I finally got to meet her last year. So like, yeah, hey man, thanks for the bed, that kind of deal.
Jeez, nice. Andy came back, says, "Make sure he's wearing pants." We can't see, but I take your word for it.
As I smile sweetly to myself.
Andy also said, "Love your show." So
right on.
That gets around. Sweet Pea chimed in. God, my screen keeps freezing up. So hopefully she's doing better. Doesn't have too many more technical issues. I know how that gets. Broadcasting these shows, you get that happens. That's the reality of life for that.
Well, between you and me, I actually have her laptop, so that's probably what part of the problem is.
That's probably the problem. Yeah. Andy also, chimed back in. Does Jason know his shorts are smoking?
Yeah, that's a sage. I was smudging, man.
Nice. So, initially we were talking about, during this year of COVID. You went through a lot of personal hell in well over 3 years ago. You found out some issues, with your liver, but it propelled you to instead of be in a world of melancholy and self-doubt. You went out and went and made an effort to go help and improve other people's lives. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. in hindsight, I kind of feel like I was kind of like riding off in the sunset kind of deal when I first jumped on that thing. But I had spent, a good 2-3 years getting to that point, because you got to jump through a lot of hoops. You got to get the diagnosis. You got to go through all these things. And when I finally got to where they were going to do something, it was like a year of them trying to get me healthy enough to actually do it. And then, and at the time, I kept thinking, that's when I started hanging out with, all of the creative people. It's because I figured that was my last summer, and I'd be able to go out there and do stuff. And I didn't know if I'd have that chance to do it again. So I don't know if you remember, I used to drag that oxygen tank around and do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right.
And that ended up, manifesting into another summer. And then it ended up going into another summer. And during all those times, like I said, I jumped on that horse ride, and I honestly didn't expect to even get on that horse ride, but it was like one of those things where you want to check it out. And in my thoughts, I mean, it sounds kind of hokey, but I used to when I was growing up, and I thought they were cool. But then later on, they kind of like I don't know, manifest themselves or whatever. It sounds like I'm talking a lot about myself, man. But
well, that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about Jason.
Yeah, right. Woo! So,
I'll be your cheerleader.
Yeah, right on, man. No, I used to always say these things like, seize the day because only fate crushes the brave, and and then it kind of pans out, because there's a lot of times when, people were like, oh, we can't do that. I'm thinking, well, why can't we? Because that guy, Andy, we used to go everywhere. Just as long as you pretend like you know what you're doing, you can get away with all kinds of crazy stuff. And that's some of the things that the La Grecas do too, as far as it's not so much, can we do that? It's more like, why can't we do that? I mean, right. Jeff was out there making a community theater out of high school. They did off-Broadway musicals, in New York and things like that. Crazy stuff, because there's nothing to hold you back if you don't have that hindrances of being worried about screwing up. So you get that reckless abandon, and it takes you to all kinds of crazy places, man. But I'm not a thrill seeker or anything like that, but it's like what I usually do is just say, okay. And then I'm parachuting out of airplanes or driving without brakes, or, things like that, or getting on a horse ride, Yeah, because before that ride, man, my only experience with horses was like a photo op when I was like 6 years old at a birthday party. And then when I think I was like 17 or 18, we had went camping, and we got a hold of some horses that hadn't been ridden in like 2 years. And, I didn't know what I was doing. My oldest brother, he supposedly knew what he was doing. And so I'm dressed in like, I got biker boots on and a wife beater shirt, and a bandana. I'm thinking I'm all cool. And I swing my leg over that horse, and he goes, yeah. And my horse just, boom, takes off down the road, And I always believe that, people on a runaway horse, that's not right. I mean, you're in control of the horse, that's never going to happen. Well, there I was about 2 miles down the track. I'd lost the reins, the stirrups. I was holding on like a crazy monkey onto that side saddle, and I'm falling off, and I'm laughing the whole way. And my brother, every time he gets closer, it just eggs my horse on, and my horse, I learned about things like low branches, because the horse was trying to rub me off the whole darn way, and yeah, so that was my experience with horses. I got to the bottom, I didn't fall off, and he was talking about walking the horses back, and I said, heck no, let's ride them. I learned that I can control the horse with my knees, because it was a cutting horse that would just drive cattle.
Oh, okay.
So every time when we're racing back up the hill, my brother would get close to me, I'd run him off into the bushes, because F him, that's why.
Oh.
So yeah, good times, man. And then I got on that horse ride, and I think you caught that story of how when I first got on it, yeah.
That was tough, but that first time, what were you setting out to do? Who were you supposed to be helping?
To be honest with you, it was more like I just saw the need. I mean, it was like a reckless thing. A buddy of mine, because I told you I was in those dark places as far as health wise.
Right.
And a buddy of mine said, "Well, that sounds like a vision quest." And I didn't know what a vision quest was at the time or anything. I have a different perspective of it now. But I thought, well, okay. And then I ended up just getting into one conversation, which led to another conversation, which led to me driving down to Pine Ridge in a rental car, picking up, people that like singers and other family members are going to be a part of the ride. And that just opened it up, because once I started hanging out, you saw a need. It'd be like, oh, that needs to be picked up. Okay, let's go do that, and let's do this. And a lot of people thought that the guy who was running the show, Dave, that he and I were really close friends, because we're always bickering and arguing and pointing things out and stuff like that. Truth be known, it was just like, no, we can't do that, because it was only the third ride that he started. And the first time there was only like a handful of people, and the second time, like I said, there was that turmoil to where there were some threats and things like that. So the third one, it was more like just keeping it together and let's just see what happens. There was lots of times when you didn't know where you were sleeping that night. But you would see the extremes of humanity on that ride. I mean, literally some of the racist stuff that we ran into, like, a while back when they had those rich people in Florida who were out there with guns out there telling people to stay off their lawn and stuff like that. Well, we kind of ran into that,
Yeah.
There was a dude standing out there. And the thing was, there was only like 2 natives around, and all the other people were just like, non-natives, but they just been wore out from the road, and he just like, saying the N-word and the prairie word and doing the stuff with the shotgun, I didn't know this at the time because I was driving the truck with the trailer. When I found that out, man, I was willing to get back into that truck and the trailer and drive through that guy's house. But but you also see things like when people would open their house up too. You never met them before, and they're saying like, "Hey, man, go ahead and just camp out here. We'll leave the back door open so you guys can all use the restroom, and give me your dirty laundry so we can clean it for you on the ride." And you're just like, you go from that one extreme to another extreme in the same day. Crazy stuff like that, man. We kept getting help all along the way. There was one time when we had it was a police department. I think it was either the Longmont or the Berthoud. I'm not sure who it was, but the guy was a mounted patrol guy too, along with being the head of their special forces for their police. And he was so into getting on this ride.
Oh, cool.
So he's really trying to support us, but he couldn't go past his jurisdiction, So it was it was a great story, because we turned around and he'd be getting on the radio talking to me, and of course the guys on the horses, they can't really hear that well or hear the phone or nothing like that, so they're all coming through me, and I don't know what's going on, but I got this caravan of people in front of me and these horses going through people's lawns and stuff, and finally we see the guy way off to the side, and he's on his horse looking all proud, like in full police gear and stuff like that, and he's just like, come on, you can keep coming to us, we can keep coming to you, so we finally get there, and the guy instantly starts taking care of us. He gave out a bunch of like not really medals, but like tokens or coins, and he had all these police officers with us. And I turned around and I asked him, I said, "Hey man, do you know of a tire shop around here? Because one of the tires on the trailer is bad, and I want to try to fix it before we take off." And he goes, and these 2 cops jump up and they tell me to follow them. They take me to their mechanic shop, and their mechanic fixed our trailer and sent us back, And while we're going up and down, sometimes you get crowded roads and stuff like that, and you're trying to keep off of the highway, the roads, because the people are driving around. And I remember somebody started honking and yelling for slowing down traffic, and that guy turned around, spun up that horse, and goes, and so it was a good time, And once we left his jurisdiction, it got tough again, and we got pulled off in this little cutaway type of thing, and we're trying to regroup or do some other things. And we had a bunch of people complaining about us being where we were at, so they brought in some deputy sheriffs or something like that, right? And they came over and they wanted to know what we were doing. And we told them, yeah, well, we were just over there, and this guy just did this. And they said, oh, well, they did that? Well, hold on. So they get on the radio. And next thing you know, we get a police escort all the way through, and they're all heaping good stuff with us, not because of them, but it was in competition of the other police department. They're saying like, oh, well, they did that for you, so we're going to do this for you, So you see extremes on both sides, but it's crazy. So I guess to answer your question, you get sucked in, you see what you can do. Not a whole lot of people knew how to drive that trailer, so I was driving the trailer. things like that. I made sure that no one got behind me. I had to be the tail end Charlie to make sure that nothing bad happened, no one got lost, and things like that. And that carries over into a lot of things.
Yeah.
I brought a bunch of radios, so I would call ahead with all the cars and everything. And the chief factor was the horses, trying to keep the horses okay. But it was like a constant 5 to 20 mile an hour trip all the way down for like 400 miles. And there were just so many things to do. You'd forget to eat. You do everything because you became a community. I didn't know what that word really meant. I thought only like realtors and hippies used to use that word until you got to the point where you could rely on someone to do something that you weren't normally used to doing.
Right.
And then you were protective. We started taking on those roles of taking care of the people in our group,
Yeah.
and looking out for and stuff. And everyone has been on that ride. I mean, it's a tough ride. It is. You learn. You learn bad behavior just doesn't work out. You know what I mean? It just it's harsh because you're either going to make it or you're just going to fail. There's no at least there's not a whole lot of people who just take. The whole thing is you all have to be part of something together because otherwise you're just not going to make it.
Yeah.
And it fundamentally changes you. And when you get there, everyone that I've been in contact with who's either made that ride or gone down the reservation, it's changed them, and they just want to keep going back. And I can understand why. And for me, it's a different perspective. I was still on the outside looking in, and now I'm feeling more welcome.
Yeah.
Because I got relatives out there. They don't even know they're my relatives, but they treat me like relatives.
Yeah.
So it's crazy,
It's a family structure.
Mm-hmm. Like a good example would be there's no real orphans out there. Let's see if I can. I'm going to try to spell it out properly.
Okay.
Well, maybe I won't. The term for orphan in the Lakota way or language is growing up without sacred direction.
Interesting.
When a parent or like a mom or a dad passes away or whatever, there's aunts and uncles and grandparents and stuff that just fill in that role. It's kind of it's a responsibility to be someone's uncle. Have to try to do all those things like an older brother or something like that. Those are just the things that are expected of you. And I can't say it's all that way, but like I said, I'm hanging out with all the people who are the helpers, the community leaders, the people who go out there and look after these things. And it just, I'm surrounded by good, giving people, and their examples are what's making me all shiny. Is the best way I can come up with it, man. Because there's things to do, and some people might say that, well, I've done enough, in reference to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But how could you just be good enough? No, just be a good person, because there's always things to do, So,
right. Yeah.
You don't know about me.
Yeah. Well, you also don't know, when those scenarios, present themselves too. You just got to be ready to hop in and lend a helping hand. But yeah, so on these rides, you're venturing into, reservations and meeting the community, and you're seeing, all kinds of things that, that people need help with, and things that need to be addressed. What sort of things, have you had to help out with? What are some of the needs of people on reservations?
Like on the reservation, well, like I was telling before, that I think it was in September, because of COVID and all the borders were getting shut down and stuff, and they weren't really shut down. I mean, if you go there, people were making these big scenes of like, they're shutting down state highways and stuff. No, it wasn't like that at all. They're very respectful. Everything's cool. They just wanted to know what you're doing, and they politely asked, well, if you're not stopping, then just drive on through. But they did shut down some things, and when they did, they had an outbreak of bed bugs, because they brought all the homeless people in. There's not really homeless people. You're kind of a homeless person by choice. You either don't have any family and you've alienated people to where you're not welcome somewhere, but for the most part, they just take everybody in. That's why they have multiple families in such small dwellings, because there's no houses out there, and you got to have shelter, So we went on that ride, and they needed bedding. We're talking, aunties and old elders and stuff like that are just sleeping on the floor with no blankets sometimes, or no whatever, and all the kids are cuddling up just to stay warm and do stuff. You run into things like that. Some of the stuff that you would consider trash is like, it's not like gold out there, but it's something, because they don't have anything. If you got to go to the parts store to work on your truck, it's a 70-mile trip one way. And even then, you've got to save up enough gas money just to get there and back again.
Right.
Because there's no jobs for the most part. Unemployment's like 80 some odd percent out in Pine Ridge. When people talk about it being a depression when it's like 5 or 9%, like, can you imagine 85 to 90% unemployed?
Yeah, it's dystopian.
Yeah, it's and a lot of people don't have either water or power running to their house. The church is kind of like they do things like they'll have an outside spigot, and it's kind of getting you to come over to the church to be part of them, because that's where they have to go to get clean water. Some people, right. Other people, because the utilities out there are still there. Their infrastructure is really broke down. Mm-hmm. But I think the water table is only like 30 or 50 feet down. It's really it could be a lot more lusher than it is, but it comes down to perspective. A lot of people say that the land is either being wasted or whatever, but it's not. It's they're using it like their garden or their kitchen or their pantry. They're not taking from the land. They're just being a part of it. And surviving all the way through. So when someone comes over and says, "No, you need to do this or you need to do that," it's just a different way to do it. Why are you going to cut everything down and pollute everything to make a profit when that's where you get your dinner from? That's where you get, that's where you raise your children. That's a whole another ball of wax to get into, man. But there's stuff there. But for the most part, it's the poverty. There are people out there that non-natives who control land out there, and they got it for like next to a song, but they say things like, well, this land has been in my family's name for 3 generations. And it was like, well, yeah, he stole it for a dime back then, and it's still cheap now. But if you've got no money, then $100 is a lot more than you could ever afford. And that's kind of like the mentality out there. There's not a whole lot going on. A $10 an hour job is a great job. This buddy of mine, his family, they live off of 5 people. They live off of like maybe $600 a month, and they're considered well off. It's crazy. So you have to rely on donations or food subsidies and stuff like that, even though that's all part of the treaties that they signed. And if you want to get into treaties and stuff too, that's another thing to get into, because I don't think I'm answering your question. So if you want to,
no, you're painting a picture of what the situations and what I mean. It's essentially dire straits. It sounds like, living on reservations like this. The poverty is just absolutely insane. I mean, it's the way you describe it. It sounds like it's third world countries. This is even though it's with it being a reservation, it's still within like the U.S. border. It's like, how as a society, how the hell do we allow this to perpetuate? I mean, these are our neighbors. We should be coming to their aid, and unfortunately, it's up to just well, not just, but people like you with huge hearts that go into these situations and try to help out the best you can.
There's no easy answer, man. I mean, you can point your fingers on a lot of stuff.
Right.
The infrastructure is jacked up. There's a lot of corruption. Because basically, if you've got no way to make anything, when you see an opportunity, you're going to go out there and do it. An example would be someone abandons a house, and everyone doesn't say, "Hey, there's a house we can move into." They say, "Hey, we can go out there and steal a copper, give it to somebody else. They can go off a reservation, and hopefully they'll give me like $20 for the hundreds of dollars of copper that I give them." You know what I mean? That's what they're scrambling for, like little things, scraps.
Yeah.
But I also want to stress, though, man, it is a wonderful place, though, too. It's a whole different perspective. Family orientated. They all take care of each other. Because the road will get washed out, and you may only be, a couple hundred yards away from the main road, but you can't. It's impassable. The rivers are swollen and stuff like that. And so these elders are these community leaders. They'll go out there and they'll send guys on horseback, our young kids, to go out and go check on the elders and stuff and bring them food and make sure that they're okay. And they just do that to do that. I went down one time. There's a good story before this trip, but we ended up. There's a lot of stories of that trip. I'll be brief. When we rolled in, I had two non-native women friends of mine who were both at Standing Rock, and they took it upon themselves to collect a whole bunch of donations. And when they finally had enough money and donations together, they were just going to drive down and just get on a corner or something like that, just try to start handing things out, because it was, like I said, it was a different perspective compared to like being on the reservation, because no one wants to go out there and beg for money or food or anything like that. But they were thinking like, well, this is what we want to do. And I was thinking, we got to do it a little bit better than that. And at the time, I was a little embarrassed to go back onto the reservation because of a miscommunication. I thought that I had promised some money and get delivered. And it was more like in my mind, it was like not so much a broken promise, but it was, they're used to lies. They're used to people doing stuff. And so I was ashamed and I didn't want to show up. But then there was a need. My friends were going to go there by themselves and try to distribute these things that they've been saving up for.
Yeah.
So we ended up calling some friends, and between the three of us and the guy, Dave Ventimiglia, off of the Teepee Raisers, he knew some people too, and community leaders, and he gave us a place to stay while we were down there. And we ended up servicing, see if I can remember now. We sent a couple of food baskets and stuff, like a carload of stuff to Hot Springs, which is off the reservation. But then we hit Oglala, we hit Yabia, we hit Wounded Knee, we hit Manderson and Porcupine. And literally in that one weekend, we donated everything. There was nothing left. And we were able to contact somebody in those little communities who were the community leaders. So they would get their people together and we would show up and give them what we could. And they would go out there and distribute it. It was such a cool experience because I've never gone somewhere and had everything gratefully taken. And you hook up with, one, I think was it Wounded Knee? I'm not sure, but they waited for like 6-7 hours for us to show up. And, it was just crazy stuff because they're all part of the community getting together and doing those things. And it was because we had enough contacts between like the four of us that we were able to service so many places. I got a lot of pictures of that, but I didn't send any to you. But that was just a spur of the moment deal. You just walk in and then suddenly you're on a trip. And to get to the point though, I was ashamed to be there because I felt I'd done something terrible, but I was welcomed like a lost relative, So there was no shame. They were just thankful that I was back.
Yeah.
And that's why you go out and do stuff. I mean, it's a wonderful place. I don't want to paint it as awful or terrible when it's so wonderful and just a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. An example of that would be in one culture, you could say, come over for dinner. Dinner's at 8. Don't be late. Mm-hmm. And if you show up late, they said they're all torqued off saying like, oh, it's ruined, blah, 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 because it's 20 minutes late. Or the other culture is like, I'm glad you made it here safely. Let me cook something for you. Let me feed you. Yeah. So it's those whole different parameters that
different dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't blow off.
Jason. We've got streaming down below nonprofits. The Tip Raisers at thetipraisers.org, strongholdsociety.org. And then for everybody watching, also Google Horse Spirit Society. Oglala. I'm butchering
Oglala.
that name.
Oglala.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, uh, yeah. So yeah, everybody. When you get off this, go and look up those nonprofits and support them. Oglala, still butchering it. Women's Healing
Oglala.
Circuit. Oglala.
Oglala. That's close enough.
Oglala. Oh man, I am so terrible with names. It's a miracle that I even know my own. Andy chimed in too. Again, strange and wonderful things happen whenever Jason is around. I honestly think Jason has no control over it, but there's always a series of wonderful events that happen if Jason is involved.
We've had a lot of good times together, man. Yeah.
I would concur that that is true.
Like I said, all you got to do is just not say no or get too worried or, falling off of cars. See, that guy, I learned that if you're going to fall off a car, you do it at least about maybe 30 miles an hour or so, because otherwise you kind of stick and roll. But if you're going fast enough, you can just kind of slide off because, in our reckless youth, that's what we did. Crazy things. We ended up
Speaking of reckless youth, I remember you telling me a story of, you and a shark. Was this in San Diego?
Yeah, actually, probably that Indy guy was with us.
Oh.
We had decided to go snorkeling, and we only had enough equipment for like two guys at the same time. And it was going to be four of us going, and one guy kind of like bailed out.
This is when you were teenagers?
Yeah, but all three of us had dreams about sharks the night before, so we're all kind of like questioning whether we should go out or not. So when we first went out, Andy and I went out first, and we went over to this cove where they got really good snorkeling and stuff like that, and we're out there looking at all the sea life. And I felt like I was a stronger swimmer, so I went out with the second guy, and the second guy he's the guy that I jumped out of airplanes with, so we were all kind of like reckless. And he swam like, I don't know, it felt like a half a mile away from where we had to climb out of the rocks, because we had to climb on these cliffs to get out. And I finally get his attention. I'm like sitting there in the water, with the waves going up and stuff, and I'm like, hey, let's go in. And he shakes his head like this and just does everything he can, beat as fast as he can, to swim away. And I'm thinking, like, what happened to the buddy system? We were supposed to be hanging out together. That's why we're out here,
Right.
I finally make my way back to where we had to climb out of the rocks, and the tide, it would go like about a foot over this rock and then drop down about 2-3 feet below it, just depending on when the waves were coming in,
Yeah.
And so they're both standing over me, looking down. And I pull up the mask, and I'm a little torqued, saying like, hey man, what the heck, blah, 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 blah. And they both point behind me, shark, like that. So next thing you know, I'm standing on that rock, looking behind me like that. I guess apparently when I was getting that guy's attention, there was a big shark swimming underneath my feet, only like about 3-4 feet away. So the whole time I didn't know there was a shark there. He was like watching the whole scene going like, we gotta go. So I don't know if that's the story you were talking about, but that's a good story.
Nice. Yeah, I think you told that to me when we were at the Stampede for like I can't remember what it was called. It was like Hearst Con or something like that.
Yeah. Good times, man.
Yeah. The with everything going on right now, you've got reservations getting hit hard with COVID. And such an amazing group of support. Like I remember hearing back during COVID, like was it Irish or Scottish people
Irish.
we're trying to give back to some indigenous people.
Well, the story behind that is even when like during the end of the Wild West and reservation life and stuff like that too, there was, I can't remember what band or group it was now. I should really know this, but they had heard that about the problems in Ireland with the potato famine and things like that.
Oh, right.
So they took it upon themselves to make a collection, and they sent, I don't know, it was like maybe $1,000 or a couple $100 or something like that. But at the time, it was like a lot of money, and it was almost everything that I put it on the stove, man. Sorry, I had a buddy of mine come in.
No worries.
All right, late, man. And so what happened was when they sent that money, the Irish never forgot about it, and they were always trying to. There's a lot of stories that go along with that too. My mom went backpacking out there, and I'm not supposed to talk about my mom, but she had a good time because they're very appreciative of the native culture because of that act. And then there was a lacrosse team that made it to the world finals or something like that, and they decided to bow out because they were Irish, because they knew that the indigenous team just didn't qualify, didn't get involved or recognized as part of that league or what have you. And so the Irish, we get a little choked up too, man. They took it upon themselves to bow out and support them, the native team, to get on there to do the lacrosse, because they were saying that they're the ones who invented it. They wanted to return the favor. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about. It's that giving thing, man, that chokes you up.
Yeah. Well, it's choking me up too. So that's why I've got to do this, you know. Yeah. But you know, it's those amazing stories too, that you've got these generational things between these two groups of people that is absolutely it's lovely, and it's endearing, and it's so sweet because you don't. Oh my God, I'm cracking up. but it's those things that make life worth living. To see, you know, people give like that and show respect and show love. So, damn it, dude.
Dude, empathy. Ooh,
so you are wearing pants, right?
Oh, I didn't hear all that. What was that?
Oh, yeah, just to bring some levity, I asked if you were still wearing pants.
Oh, no, I'm not. So,
okay. You're air drying.
Yeah. Let it all hang out, baby.
Excellent. As one should. That is the neighborly thing to do.
I figure that way I can smile sweetly to myself. I'm not saying that right, but it's a line off of Monty Python sketch.
Yes. Oh, love Python. I would imagine that you know, you and the La Grecas would probably, you know, exchange Monty Python lines day in and day out.
Actually, no, but that Andy dude and I, oh heck yeah, man, he did. Like I said, we did a lot of stuff in high school out there too. We were in the drama department and stuff, and in the school that we were at, it was kind of unusual because we did a lot of plays. The teacher kind of like almost got overwhelmed because we were doing like 5 or 7 plays a year, along with the talent show and a beauty pageant, you know. So if you're working backstage, you're constantly doing things. And like you know, that high school about a year or so ago that did they made their own script and their own thing of the movie Alien.
Right. I remember hearing that.
Our school did the same thing with Great Expectations. We had
cool.
Hooked up with the Old Globe Theater out there, got a bunch of costumes. Excuse me, it was our big production for the year. And yeah, we even had period tuxedos and stuff like that. And we built all the sets, and we had boats going on, and we wrote our own scripts. And we never actually got to perform the whole play in one night because it was so long, man. But, yeah, right. There was a boat accident. Someone got hit in the head with a hammer. Tree. Actually, it was another Shakespeare play. Was it As You Like It, where a tree fell on stage? But those are the things we get into all the time, you know, in high school. Because the show has to go on. It doesn't matter what happens in the background. So,
right.
Attitude of like, why can't we do that? Or let's just use a nail or a staple gun, you know, and it'll work.
Well, and I think you bring that attitude to, you know, to helping people, you know, as well. You know, why can't we?
Yeah. A lot of times you just take you take a different perspective. You take put yourself on the outside and you look at the parameters of what needs to be done. Okay, well, you know, you want to go fishing, or you want to fish dinner. So suddenly you start thinking about all these things that's going to take for you to go get a fish dinner. And once you have those things in place, in order, if something comes up or something throws a monkey in the wrench, you can easily fix it because you've already got all these other plans laid out. Suddenly you can't take that guy's truck to haul the boat because it's broke down, but you got another guy that you can do it. So all those problems seem really small. So it's not so much like you can solve any problem. It's just more like you just got to look at what you're really trying to do. Take that moment of thought and say, "Oh, this is what we're trying to accomplish," and then everything else just kind of falls into place, or you adapt. And dude, it's like on the reservation too. It's a buddy of mine. Well, I sent a picture of him. He got his face smashed with a Chevy Suburban, but he got stuck. Yeah. I got a better one where it's all his teeth and everything. But Chuck was actually involved with that too, because I was trying to send his family money because, like I said, the hospital is like 70, 80 miles away. And that's a pretty powerful story if you want to hear that one too, man. That's a tearjerker.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time, right now. We're, I'm
looking at it now. I do have one story that I want to throw out there. It's pretty strong too, and it's right at the end of that first horse ride. We roll up, and I'd been like in the trailer the whole time. But the one thing that I actually not so much demanded, but I insisted upon, I wasn't going to go onto the reservation hiding in a truck. I wanted to be on a horse, So we had to make a lot of arrangements, and someone else had to do my job to get me on the horse. And then once I did that, then perspectives kind of changed to where I'm on the back end of the whole ride, and I'm making sure not one horse gets behind me. So I'm making sure that everyone in front is doing their thing, and we roll through this town called White Clay. And at the time, they just stopped selling alcohol. It was like a temporary restraining order, and they had put the native population had put like a protest camp just outside, just on the reservation. We're talking like about a block away, half a block away. You could throw a rock. It was like a lot and a half of, because this town was so small. I mean, back when I had an arm, I could throw a rock like maybe 3 times and get all the way through this town. But they've got like 3 or 4 liquor stores and like 12 people who live there, and that's about it. All they do is they sell booze to get on the reservation. They're trying to shut it down. So I'll be fast with this.
Okay.
So we roll through the town, and we're just looking at all this stuff, and you can go on YouTube and see all these terrible things about White Clay. But that's where they started the protests of Wounded Knee. It was because someone got drugged behind a car and stuff up and down this road. Oof. So we get into this protest camp, and by now we've already are familiar with etiquette and stuff like that. So there's a guy who greets us there at the front, and he welcomes us in, and he smudges all the horses down while we go by. And since I'm at the end and all the cars are behind me, I direct them, and we get into this half semicircle, and we're on these horses. And the guy starts telling them who he is. His name is Joel Pullman, and this is his story. And he's got that can with a burning sage, and he kind of sets it off to the side a little bit and starts talking about why the protest camp was there and how they're trying to stop the alcohol. And then he says, in this town right here in White Clay, who I just said I can throw a rock 3 times and get all the way through it. He says there's over 300 not just unreported, but uninvestigated murders. And I'm like, what did he just say? And then he points down at the can, and he says, see that right there? That's where they found my father. And you're like, what the hell did he just say? And then he points off to the side, and he says, those bushes over there, that's where they found my uncle when he came looking for my father. And he realized that the ground all around is just saturated with blood, and it just rips you up, man. And this dude is a really good artist too. I think Chuck actually has some of his work, or one piece of his work. But I think he was telling me that he's got some artwork at the Smithsonian. So it wasn't just some dude sitting there with a terrible story. I mean, like he was there as a leader of that protest camp, and they were trying to keep the liquor licenses from opening up. And you run into those things when people talk about Vision Quest or one thing or another. I say that doesn't happen all the time, but it seems like every time I go up there, something goes on. Powerful stuff.
Yeah. Wow. That is absolutely just intense. Some of your adventures too do lead you to participating in things that you wouldn't normally, you know, think you would be involved in, like
Yeah.
hides.
Yeah. That was a good time, man. Like I said, it started out. I got a call and I picked up a couple of hides and didn't know what I was doing for nothing. It was kind of like if suddenly someone gives you a bunch of buffalo hides and you've got to set it
Yeah.
up. These school projects, and you know, and they're going to do because you got to stop and think. When you talk about astrological signs and stuff, we all recognize, you know, Orion's belt or whatever, but other people looked up and they didn't know who Orion was. So they all have their own astrological signs and stuff like that go along with it. And this one person was describing all that, but I ended up, like I said, right in my backyard, scraping hides and, you know, rubbing salt in there and not know. I'm getting on YouTube figuring out how to do it, you know, and like I said, then I ran into someone who knew my grandfather, and that was crazy too, you know.
Wow.
So
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You've been on, you know, reservations, learning like new trades, and then, you know, meeting people that, you know, knew your family.
yeah, yeah. And some of it too, because the lifespan out there is so short too. 20 years, and a lot of people only just remember somebody or things like that. So it's one of those things where, yeah, just in my lifetime, because you had to figure we're like 50 years old. We're over half a century, you know, and there's a lot of people who are elders out there, but there's just like this huge gap of like, you know, young people and then people who are just dying off, and then some elders, and it's really one of those things where they're trying to bring in uh, that traditional learning and stuff now, because it was almost lost. If you caught that one video with that buddy of mine, Ruben Fasthorse, who he was speaking in front of the United Nations during that thing, talking about the lack of um, culture and how with the written language or the language disappearing, and the way, man, if you get into the boarding schools and stuff like that, it's just terrible what they did. It was picture that scene in um, Red Dawn, you know, with Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen when they're out there visiting their dad in the concentration re-education camps and stuff like that. That's what all those boarding schools were. It started out, they tried to kill off the natives, and then they tried to assimilate them, and then they tried to take their children and basically make them just disappear. And terrible stuff, and it happens all the time, and it's still happening. That's the thing. When people say it happened a long time ago, no, it's, you know, like I said, it happened to my mom, or it's happened to those kids over there. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think an hour is long enough, man. We're just getting into it, you know.
I know. You know, we're gonna have to, you know, revisit this, but you know, before we wrap up, you know, we've got the ticker going down there with you know, all these wonderful websites. Where else, you know, Jason, can people go to, you know, to help out, to pitch in, to support these causes?
Well, there's a lot of things going on, and like I said, the two on the end, they're more like grassroots. Other people out there trying to do some things. There's a like say for me, I tend to collect a lot of food and stuff because I thought about trying to do like a food bank out there, but see, a food bank is usually supported by the community, and everyone there is poor, so they don't really have a whole lot. So I'm always bringing in food that I can, and you know, I'll cheat a little bit too because my mom will go to a food bank, and when I push her around because she's in a wheelchair, she's got a broken hip, and when they say like, well, take all you want of that, I take all I want. You know what I mean? I fill the thing up because it's going to end up on the reservation. Because in my mind, it's not like I'm stealing or taking. It's more like it's there to provide people for food, and they just don't have the food up there. So I'm just getting my opportunity to send it up. That's what the teepee raisers do a lot. I mean, they originally started with building houses and infrastructure, but they do so much more too, as far as people give calls like, hey, we need this or we need that, or uh, things like that. So they're always like, they're constantly bringing in wood. I think I was telling you that I got a bunch of wood in my backyard, and because you know, they use wood for heating, and if they don't have any wood, then they freeze, you know, and things like that go on.
A little access to electricity, I suppose.
Yeah, some people do and some people don't. It really is just like a mix And even when they do have stuff, it could be out for the utilities and the services could be out for a lot longer than they have out here. I remember I was over in, I think it was Porcupine, or no, it was Manderson. And someone was doing some construction work, and they cut the water line, the main water line into the town. And so all the adults, when I ran into them, they said, "Hey, do you have any water?" And I didn't have any at the time, but all the kids were just out there playing, but they had no water. I mean, no forewarning, no nothing. They just had no water for like 5, 6 days. The whole time just spilling out on the ground down this hill, because they couldn't even shut it off. It's just the way that the things go up there. They don't have, I don't want to say the infrastructure and keep saying that, but they just don't have the same kind of one dude in a department is going to do like 8 or 10 different things, and he's not going to have any real training involved with it for the most part. Not completely, but you can't really hire people to go build big houses out there unless you're going to get some guys that are struggling with the experience, with the knowledge to be able to do those things, and they're few and hard to find.
Right.
But it's all out there, and it's one of those things where some people will say, "Why don't they just leave the reservation?" But you got to understand that's kind of like where they come from. That's everything, And on top of that, too, you've got those surrounding border towns that are just so full of like racism and stuff like that it's almost like they're a defense trying to push them back in and calling them terrible things and making them feel awful.
Right.
I almost started cussing and using some of the racial words that they throw out there, but it's a tough place to be.
Yeah.
And for me to find myself in the middle of it on one side and the other side, I think I mentioned earlier to you that I've only been doing these things for like the last 3.5 years or so, and it's all just overwhelming. You can't say enough, man.
Yeah. Andy, chime back in. One last sweet thing. Nancy got Penny and was able to bury it next to her husband. So she says thank you.
Right on. If you want to hear that story, that's a good story too, man. It could be fast.
Okay. Yeah.
While Andy was out, I would see like lucky pennies, a heads up penny. For some reason, I can't walk out of the house without 4 quarters, a nickel, a penny, or a nickel, a dime, and a heads up penny. And he was about ready to take off to the airport, and it was more like sort of like when you say, "I love your show." You know what I mean? I was giving him my lucky penny for his journey back, and it was kind of an unexpected thing. Right before he walked out the door, I gave him a penny and stuck it in his pocket. Yeah. And the day after he got back, he ran into an old electrician friend of his. He does a theatrical lighting and stuff like that. He's a sound engineer and an electrician and that kind of thing. And so he ran into one of his old electrician helpers or friends or something, and they started getting more acquainted again. And she asked what day it was, and he told her, and he found out that that's the day that her husband died. And she told him a story before that they would use like pennies and put them around to show, like, thank you for the packing my lunch, and they put a penny on the side or something like that to show the value or worth of something.
Yeah.
And so she jumps up and she says, "Well, I got to jump on this bus and go take off to go visit the gravesite because I didn't realize it was this day," kind of deal. So my buddy Andy drives her down to the bus station, and then he reaches in for a cigarette and he finds this penny and he goes, "Oh, I think this is your penny." And he gives it to her and tells her the whole story. And then he just finished up by saying that she took the penny and buried it with her husband. And it's like that full circle thing, things that just happen that are unexpected, and it's just powerful stuff, powerful stuff.
Jason, it's such a privilege to be able to, God damn it, get all teary-eyed, talking to you and stuff, But it's always so wonderful to chat with you.
Right on, man. I feel bad because of health issues and stuff. I tend to be shy with a lot of people, but I don't mean to be. It's just by the time I hook up with them, I'm already so tired and mentally fatigued that I can't even hold a conversation. No,
that's quite all right. You've got your stuff to work with and to overcome, and at the same time, you're enriching the world and making things better. So
I've got some fine examples to follow. So, and I would be a terrible person if I didn't.
Right. No, that's so good that we have people like that in the world. And again, I'm gonna keep throwing compliments your way. People like you helping to make things better.
Well, I think to finish that up on the Lakota way, you don't. It's improper or impolite to brag about yourself, but you brag about your friends or the people around you because they're a community or a group, and so the more prestigious one person is, the more prestigious they all are. So that's why when you get someone given eagle feathers or whatever, or you go in and you don't say like I did this, you say, hey man, did you see that guy? He fell off that car, or he
Right.
jumped through those hoops, or he did all those things, and it makes everybody that cool, and with that kind of knowledge, you don't brag about yourself. You're not so selfish. You're talking your friends up, and then they also appreciate things. I appreciate all the cool things. Like I said earlier, you always throw all kinds of support my way into everybody's way. I remember showing up at a filming of I think it was the famous year,
Oh,
yeah, and we're at the Bug Theater or something like that. Next thing you know, we're taking pictures of Turkey Dick, and doing all those kinds of things. So good times, man. Good times.
oh yeah. No, yeah. It's always a pleasure to be able to catch up with you and to hear all these amazing stories, because you're also a really good storyteller as well, which is something that I think definitely needs to be continued in indigenous cultures as well as everybody else's too. So
Right.
Jason, thanks so much. Everybody, who tuned in, thanks to you. Appreciate all your support. Today's episode is also brought to you by Mutiny Cafe. If ever you want to start a revolution, make sure you're caffeinated.
Heck yeah.
So thanks again, Jason. Stick around, while we sign off. But to everybody out there, thanks so much. Stay warm out there. Look out for each other. Take care of each other. We love you. Have a good night.
Love your show.
You're my hero.
You should see me without my pants on. Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, amazing.